So now let's talk a little bit about subtracting integers. I'm going to write at the top that I am subtracting integers here. And I'm going to draw you a picture of a subtraction problem. It's going to look like this. There we go. And the subtraction expression that could represent this, let's see where we start first. We start at -6, and then we go to the left, right? So I can tell that I must have subtracted a positive value if I went to the left. And I subtracted specifically 4, because -6, -7, -8, -9, -10, that's 4 that I subtracted. So this is -6 minus 4. I could also represent this with an equation. So -6 minus 4 equals -10. Let's try another one. I'm going to start at -6 again. But this time I want to go the other direction. Like that. So if I want to use subtraction to go to the right, what do I have to do? I have to subtract a negative, because when I subtract a negative, my value becomes less negative. So I'm still starting at -6, but this time I'm subtracting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. So this is -6 minus -7. That allowed me to go 7 to the right. And if I were going to write an equation for this, I would say -6 minus -7 equals +1, because that's where I landed. I landed at +1. Let's see if you can represent this one. I'm going to write an equation. I'm going to write an expression, and I want you to draw me a model and give me an equation. So I am going to write 2 minus 4. And then pause the video and take a moment to draw the model and then to write the equation. All right, you must be ready to talk about it because you've hit play again. Okay, so 2 minus 4. So I'm subtracting a positive. I'm subtracting a +4. So that means if I start at 2, I am going to be going to the left. And I'm going 4 to the left. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So I land at -2, and now I can write my equation. 2 minus 4 equals -2. Fantastic. So let's see if we can use these examples to make some generalizations. So these are the 3 subtraction equations that we wrote. I call them a subtraction sentence because they really are a complete thought, right? We're not just saying -6 minus 4 here. We're saying -6 minus 4 equals -10. That's a complete sentence. That's why we call that an equation. Okay, so we could also use addition to represent a very similar equation, right? In fact, this number line I've drawn here, we represented it with subtraction, but we could use addition to show the same phenomenon, to show the same thing that's going on here, to get how to get from -6 to -10. So one way to get from -6 to -10 is to subtract 4, right? If you subtract a +4, you go 4 to the left. But another way to do it is to say -6 plus -4. And that's a little bit easier for us to think about, because we know that when we add 2 negatives, our sum is negative. So we really are just adding 6 and 4. That's 10. And then we keep the sign of those 2 values, which is negative. So -6 plus -4 is -10. A lot of the time when subtracting integers, it's easier to rewrite the problem that you're working with as addition. Let's try it with this next one. -6 minus -7. Well, it can be challenging to think about how to take away a -7, right? How do I take away a negative? And we represented it on the number line here, how we're going from -6 to +1 by making our value less negative. Specifically, we're making it 7 less negative than it was. Another way to think about this, though, is addition, because addition is a way for us to take it to the right, right? So watch this. We started at -6, and then we took away a -7. Well, taking away a -7 is the same thing as adding a +7. And then that's easier to see that that would be 1, right? Because we already know that when we add integers with different signs, we're really just finding the difference of those 2 integers, and we're keeping the sign of the value with the larger absolute value. So in this case, 7 has a larger absolute value than -6. So my answer, my sum here is positive. And the difference of 7 and 6 is 1. So it's a positive 1. Now let's look at this next one. It's also currently a subtraction equation, but it could be addition. We could write 2 plus negative 4 equals negative 2. So who has the larger absolute value here? Negative 4. So my answer is going to be negative. And 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2. So any subtraction sentence can be rewritten as an addition sentence. It's just that instead of subtracting 4, we added negative 4. Instead of subtracting negative 7, we added positive 7. Instead of subtracting positive 4, we added negative 4, right? So what we're really doing is rewriting it as addition, and then we are adding the opposite. So the generalization that we can write here is when subtracting integers, what we're going to do is rewrite it as addition and add the opposite of the value being subtracted. Let's practice with a couple more. So we're starting out with negative 10 minus 3. Let's rewrite it as addition. That's going to become negative 10 plus negative 3. So negative 10 minus positive 3 becomes negative 10 plus negative 3. That's easier for me to think about because I know 10 plus 3 is 13. So this is going to be negative 13. Okay, next we have 5 minus negative 5. So I'm going to rewrite that as 5 plus 5 because I'm going to add the opposite. So I was subtracting a negative 5. Instead of subtracting a negative 5, I'm going to add a positive 5. And 5 plus 5 is 10. Great, and that's a lot easier than thinking about 5 minus negative 5. So whenever I'm subtracting integers, I can just rewrite my problem as addition, and then I can add the opposite of the value being subtracted.